and His Worship Mayor Victor Luca for Whakatane District Council, and also a full voting member, of course, of this committee, and an external member is David Spears, and he is voting and posing questions if need be on behalf of the New Zealand Transport Agency. So I also have some apologies today from David Moore, Paitiki District Council, Faylene Tunui, the Mayor of Kawerau, and also Councillor Eris. Did we have Julian? Yes. Her Worship Mayor Tanya Tapsell, and Deputy Mayor John Scrimmager from the Western Bay of Plenty. Are there any further apologies? There being none, I will move. Honourable Ken Shirley seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Just some quick housekeeping matters. The tea and coffee facilities at the rear of the room are for the submitters and members of the public here today. And for morning tea and lunch, everyone on this end of the room and staff will be going downstairs. That's correct. I just have a statement to read pertaining to this public recording. I remind committee members and the public that these hearings are being live streamed and recorded. They'll be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting and archived for a period of 3 years. Our purpose is to provide greater access to council debate, decision making, and encouraging openness and transparency. I also remind all present that local government decision making affords no protection to councillors, council officers, and the public for comments made during the meetings that are subsequently challenged in the court of law and determined to be slanderous. And just some specific comments pertaining to today's hearings. Consultation on the draft RLTP closed on the 24th of March this year. We received a total of 133 written submissions, with 28 people electing to speak in person to their submission, either as individuals or on behalf of their organisation. There are 3 sessions of hearings taking place in Tauranga, Rotorua and Whakatane this week. These are being heard by a panel consisting of all the members of the Regional Transport Committee, and as we recall, that was a resolution at our last meeting that all the voting members would constitute the hearings committee. All the hearings will be live streamed. Hearings provide an opportunity for people who have made submissions to speak to the panel about their submission and to present supporting evidence. Once the hearings are complete, all submissions will be considered by the Regional Council staff, who will then make recommendations to the committee on how the submissions should be accommodated in the RLTP. The committee will meet to deliberate the submissions and recommendations on the 7th of May 2024. The final RLTP will need to be adopted and then submitted to the New Zealand Transport Agency by the 1st of August 2024 for its consideration for funding and inclusion in the National Land Transport Programme. There are no further apologies. There are no more items to go on the agenda today. The order of business, there is none, no adjustments. Declarations of conflict of interest, anybody? A number are going to be making submissions today, so we'll note that in the course of the flow of the meeting. If I can just take you over to the minutes of our last meeting on the 9th of February. Would someone who was there move those as a reasonably true and accurate record of that meeting? His Worship Mayor Denia seconded the Honourable Ken Shirley. Any further discussion or matters arising from those minutes? There being none, I'll put them. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And we do need to, as part of that, receive the report. The Regional Land Transport Planning hearings that are coming up on page 15. And the first things that we need to do are move 3 resolutions, those being that we receive the report, the Regional Land Transport Plan 2024-2030, 34. And we receive, if requested, and agree to hear late submissions to the draft Regional Land Transport Plan 2024-2034. And we receive those after the closing date for submissions, and we receive tabled documents from submitters during the hearings. I'm happy to move. Commissioner Selwood, are you happy to second? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. So we're now into the hearing submissions to the draft 2021-2031 Regional Land Transport Plan. Nathan, is that you? Just come forward to the table. Now, Roger, you're at the back of the room. Would you? I will invite you to sit closer to the table if you so wish. So you can. Would you prefer to like to come and sit next to His Worship the Mayor over here, so you can. Roger, everyone is profoundly deaf, so if you're speaking, please don't put your hands over your mouth, and please address him personally and look him straight in the eye. So we'll just wait for Roger to come forward. He's got his dog with him. Good to have you here, Roger.
Thank you.
And I'm operating off page 11, and the rest, other than myself and Commissioner Selwood, who's also got a copy of the Los Angeles phone book there, he's operating, you're all operating off page 38. Nathan, welcome. And sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes, so floor's yours. And then there may be some questions, points of clarification. We don't get into a debate with you or start scrapping with you, for want of an expression. So go for it, floor's yours.
And the Bay of Plenty. Ooh. Turn my microphone on. Thank you. Kia ora. So my name is Nathan. I'm a quantity surveyor working on construction projects. So big passion of mine is the built environment, and opportunities like this to speak on the built environment of our beautiful city and Te Moana Ātoe region are much appreciated. I've been living in Tauranga for 12 years, which is more than half of my life, and really invested and excited to see the city and the region grow and develop, and over the next 10, 20, 50 and 100 years. And what was really exciting for me was this regional land transport plan, specifically the notes made on the commitment from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council towards reducing emissions, specifically from our transport. We know that we're in Tauranga, we have a reliance on our private motor vehicles, which are detrimental to the environment. And so moving from that environmental standpoint is how do we address that by looking at multimodal and shifting the modes. And I really liked the wording in the plan, which was providing better travel choices so that everyone can participate and thrive in society. That's obviously huge for our disability communities, our rangatahi, our young people, and our elderly people. Our elderly people and our rangatahi make up a disproportionate or a higher proportion in Tauranga than other regions in New Zealand, so really important. What I wasn't so thrilled about was when I looked further into the plan and looked at the budget and the allocation of resources towards these things, I found that even though these two stated goals were at the very top of our plan, the funding is actually at the very bottom, and it's only a fraction of the resources allocated to public transport and modal shift as it is to building our roads, our state highways, and investing in more car dependency and over-reliance in car transport. However, I was thrilled to see that we are looking to standardise our payment across our buses. That was really exciting to see, as well as the second stage of the Cameron Road upgrades and multimodal. I've really been enjoying walking down Cameron Road and seeing the improvements made there, and I've heard a lot of backlash towards that. in terms of people commuting up and down it. But I personally would like to really thank the teams that worked on it and the political impetus to move forward with the second stage and make Tauranga a walkable, cyclable, more vibrant and thriving city in the future when we get some of our further investment, such as the museum and all of the Manawa Takiwa Te Papa development, as well as the council building that's going in next door. I'm really excited to see how these developments improve the liveliness of our city, because we know it's been taking a lot of hits in terms of businesses leaving, and we know that there's a massive investment that needs to happen. So I'm, again, really pleased to see that the second stage of the Cameron Road development is going ahead. Just to wrap up, I wanted to touch on a few things that I would like to see. Like I said, I was disappointed to see didn't have any funding, or had a lack of funding from my perspective. First one being the buses. I read that under the section of that mentioned buses in the plan, that it was possible to transport ourselves around the city using our buses, which I absolutely agree is true, but should not be the standard that we're holding ourselves to if we really want to hit those environmental goals, reduce the car dependency, and reduce congestion by getting people out of cars and into buses. It needs to be a viable alternative to driving, not just a thing that you can do if you have all the time in the world. Trains, I was really excited to read that there's no, that Waka Kotahi say that there is no reason why we couldn't have inter-regional rail. I was really disappointed to see that Bay of Plenty Regional Council wasn't taking that any further, or looking to invest or bring to the table any plans, or look to bring in anyone to develop that further. I would really love to be able to take a train to Auckland, to Tamaki Makaurau, to Kirikiriroa, Hamilton from Tauranga. That would be really awesome. It's awesome to see that that is possible. And yeah, I would really love to see some impetus towards getting that on board. And I didn't see anywhere in the plan anything on like a bike sharing system that might come into play in the next 10 years. I think that's definitely has seen success overseas and could be a way that we make the most of our upgrades to places such as Cameron Road, as well as our long stretch down Moao, Opamore, Arataki, through a bike sharing system set up by the council. That's something I would really love to see, and potentially noted, if not proposed by this transport plan. Thank you. Kia ora.
Nathan, panel, are there any questions or points of clarification from anybody? Commissioner Selwood.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nathan, for your presentation, and I acknowledge your support for Cameron Road Stage 1, and of course, one of the priority projects in the plan is Cameron Road Stage 2, and that is predicated on urban intensification along what will be effectively the core public transport corridor for the city in the future, and accommodating much of the city's growth. My question, though, is did you also appreciate that although State Highway 29 is a state highway project and a roading project, it is also a significant public transport project, because the creation of the new corridor will enable the existing State Highway 29 corridor to become a local road, which will open up public transport connectivity to Cameron Road from Tauriko, where there is potential for 25 to 30,000 homes in that area connected to the Tauriko business estate. So it's designed to create a live, work, play in that area with public transport connectivity to the city and the mount, etc. So I hear your concern about the state highway level of investment, but did you appreciate that that is also a significant investment in urban intensification and public transport?
No, I did not appreciate that. However, I do still have some concern around that being a suburban sprawl problem and all the challenges that come with that.
Worship Mayor Luca.
You made the statement you were excited to see the region grow. Why?
Because I personally am really interested and excited in culture, arts, and architecture, and seeing these things blossom in our city takes more people to come and watch the shows, more people to come and create art and share it with us. So from an arts and culture and an arts and cultural perspective, that's one reason, as well as I think possibly I could amend my statement by saying that I'm excited to see the region grow well. It is going to grow. There is nothing we can do about it, and I want to see it not have the same growing pains that it's had over the last 10 years with its congestion issues.
Panelists, any further questions? Being none, thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and present.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Given due deliberations in coming days and weeks. So,
But allow. Thank you
so much. Mark, are you ready? You're known to everyone around the table, so I don't think you need any introduction. But good to have you here, and thank you too for taking time out of your day to come and present to us. So we're looking at about 10 or 15 minutes, everybody, but I'm known for my generosity, so if you go over, you'll be accommodated. Commissioner Selwood and I are operating colleagues off page 665, and the rest on computers are going off 692. So the floor is yours, Mark.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak briefly. So we responded to the documents online, and we're in agreement with what you had to say. But there were a few points that we wanted to raise today for you to factor into your thinking. So by way of explanation, we're the Te Puke Economic Development Group. As the title suggests, we're focused on economic development. We work with industry, all types of business. They could be corporate, small, medium type businesses. We have engagement with central, regional and local government. And as such, we have a good understanding of business and economic activity in the Te Puke region. The reason for wanting to speak to you was really some comments that are aimed at a sustainable, fit-for-purpose transport system that works for industry, growth and communities. Te Puke is described, or we describe it as the area from the Papamoa Hills to Otamarākau. In total, there are 9 communities in this Te Puke area, and each of those 9 communities have their own identity. They have industry, they have business, and they have social infrastructure. And Te Puke is the township that serves this area. So we are an area that is heavy on economic development and certainly economic prosperity. I know those are terms that the Regional Council uses. Te Puke has 20,000 people. So there are 10,000 people in the township and 10,000 in rural areas. So when we talk about the region, the Regional Council talks about the larger urban centres of Tauranga, Rotorua, Whakatane. I think it's worth considering 20,000 people in the centre of the Bay of Plenty with very significant economic growth, output, development as being worthy of consideration as a voice for what is an important contributor to the Bay of Plenty's gross domestic product. Te Puke has housing growth. Currently, there are 1,000 houses being built in Te Puke, or planned to be built. And there's potential to grow the township, currently at 6 by perhaps 6,000 people over the next 10 to 15 years. We have rural settlements at Makatu, Paengaroa, Pongakawa, Pukahina, Otamarākau. Equally, it's important with these communities that there is good planning for a transport system, as these communities provide work primarily around the kiwifruit industry. We've seen housing growth at Paengaroa in recent years, and we currently have a plan, or there is a plan before independent commissioners for 130 new homes in Pongakawa, a rural area requiring a district plan change but an expansion of an existing settlement region. And the reason that I raise all these points is to try to build a bit of a picture that we have a large service centre, we have 10,000 people, we have another 10,000 in the hinterland, and all of that region is very engaged in economic activity. That activity could add up to as much as $2 billion, and the kiwi fruit industry for Te Puke region only fruit is heading towards $1 billion per annum. So this is quite a sizable, significant contribution not only to the Bay of Plenty, but also to New Zealand. In addition to kiwi fruit, we have dairy farming, forestry, wood processing, manufacturing, and a whole raft of service industries which are very much focused on the kiwi fruit industry. And kiwi fruit growth with new plantings in Te Puke is about 250 hectares per annum, which creates about 1.5 new jobs per hectare. So busy place. Now we have public transport in place, which can take people from Te Puke to the larger urban centres, and also through the regional council service does service some people in the rural areas. So I think public transport works, and we compliment you for that. But equally, we need to focus on economic growth and what roading is critical. So that's a mix of local and nationally managed roads, because we do have a state highway as part of that. And I think it's fair to say that the Western Bay of Plenty Council, which has responsibility for a lot of our roads, does need to support regionally and certainly from the central government, because their ability to fund some of these things is, I guess, impossible in some respects, considering their only source of revenue is rates, and there are some contributions for growth. So some of the key roading things, perhaps as part of your regional roading system to think about, are firstly the Te Puke Highway, managed by the District Council, that runs from the Paengaroa roundabout that exits onto the Tauranga Eastern Link through Te Puke Township back to Papamoa. The traffic volumes on the Te Puke Highway are probably greater now than they were when the Tauranga Eastern Link opened. And you may recall that there was some speculation at the time that Te Puke would die. Quite the opposite. Te Puke's actually flourished. Now that highway, seasonally and also outside the kiwi fruit industry, is extremely busy. Trucking that use the road from feeder roads for kiwi fruit and all sorts of business activity. So there's 20,000 cars a day approximately travelling down that highway. One thing that Te Puke will need in the longer term planning is a bypass. It is impossible that the current roading system can cope with kiwi fruit growth through the township, and we need to contemplate how we could bypass the town. That would cost many tens of millions of dollars, and I think that's a regional issue and a national issue. There are a number of particular roads that should be perhaps thought about in your system. Number 1 road, District Council working hard to try to overcome safety issues, but it is home to the largest single post-harvest site in New Zealand, potentially Southern Hemisphere, and it also is the location of a significant science establishment, Plant and Food New Zealand. So that road and its problems are very much linked to the ability to move through the town swiftly with freight, and that could include a bypass. The upcoming Rangiora Business Park will create many jobs, and whilst there's very sophisticated roading currently under construction in and out of the park off the Tauranga Eastern Link, there will also be access off the Te Puke Highway, and all of that adds to the growing volumes that move through Te Puke. From Paengaroa, as we head east, there is a state highway, State Highway 2, that travels to Otamaraka, and then on, of course, to Matata Whakatane. That is a road that is regularly requiring repair. There has been an upgrade recently at one section, small upgrade. But to be perfectly frank, the central government needs to understand that that road is not fit for purpose. It is unsafe, and it does not have the capacity to cope with traffic, with the growing economic activity. Parallel to that, we have Old Coach Road managed by the Western Bay, but I mention that because there are rural feeder roads that come from there that make their way to the state highway, and equally those rural feeder roads make their way through to the Te Puke Highway, and some of those feeder roads not directly onto the state highway actually feed off the Te Puke Highway. So that roading network, which is localised, is critical to get that $1 billion of fruit to market. Trucking, important, growing, and I think truck parking issues are a big issue. Current trucking firms based in Te Puke are fine solutions. They buy land, but I think that's just a growing issue that needs to have some consideration about where do trucking companies park their trucks if they're unable to secure land to do so. I'd also like to mention very briefly the Te Puke to Papamoa East interchange. We support that. There's proposals from some that it should be elevated in the thinking. I think with housing growth in Te Puke, particularly in the township, there would be an opportunity to link that in the Seddon Street area where there is currently 150 homes being built that would take it directly to the interchange. And then finally, we'd just like to lend our support to those that are promoting or suggesting elevation of a Te Puke to Rangiuru Business Park cycleway. We think it's a higher priority. There are currently no safe separated cycleways in and out of Te Puke, so that we think that's worthy of consideration. So in summary, our points are, please think about Te Puke as a vibrant, growing area in its own right, economic growth, economic prosperity, more people living in communities, and a fit-for-purpose transport system to enhance what is expected to be a growing and profitable number of communities over the foreseeable future. Thank you very much.
Submission, Mark. Can I just clarify that this is in the name of Te Puke Economic Development Group? If
Yes,
I got the title right?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay, fine, thanks. Honourable Ken Shirley.
Thank you, Mark. A very helpful submission, very detailed. Two questions I've got. As you'd appreciate, the whole concept of the regional transport plan is to get better integration between urban growth and transport, which is critical. Some would argue there's been a sort of initially it was sort of intensification, go up along transport routes. More recently, sort of out and up. How do you see the sort of the concept of, particularly in the patch where you are, with the satellite village concept? Because there's a strong argument that you need both. You need the intensification of the bigger townships, but also with the kiwi fruit growth, the jobs, there is a high potential for sort of the satellite village concept, and there's a number of examples which you'd be familiar with. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, certainly. So I think the township of Te Puke may well have focus on medium density residential growth, but I think the satellite areas, as you term them, are pretty much the hub and spoke way that Te Puke works. So the hub is the service centre, the spokes are those existing rural settlements. So Makatu has 1,200 people, Paengaroa has about 2,800 people, Pongakawa has close to 3,000 people, Pukahina Beach has about 1,000 people. So in some of those areas, particularly Pongakawa and Paengaroa, there's ability, scope, potential to grow some of those rural communities, not by thousands of homes, but by hundreds of homes. And the work is there, and all of the social infrastructure is there, and the access to 12 schools is there, and the access to service industries, etc., is there, and retail and everything in the township. So we've long promoted the idea that those satellites or those sort of smaller rural settlements should be encouraged to grow where it makes sense, and where those that want to grow or deliver housing can deliver world-class infrastructure. So we're very much in favour of that.
Thank you. The other question I had relates to the Te Puke bypass, because at first glance, some would say, well, the Eastern Link Road, that's your bypass. But in a way, that's an inter-regional traffic. I think what I understand from what your submission said, there's so much congestion now with the growth around Te Puke itself, and given the topography with those steep gullies and narrow roads, 1, 2 and 3 roads sort of separated by big gullies, that you've got serious congestion through the township itself. And you're suggesting, as I understand it, a bypass route to overcome that problem.
Yeah, bypass, because the town is a business town. It's full of service industries and professional people, all sorts of the servicing industry. And the kiwi fruit industry itself is taking fruit through the town, because they're not going to take the fruit from some roads back to the Paengaroa or go on the Tauranga Eastern Link. So that just grows and grows and grows simply because of the growth of the kiwi fruit industry. So it's congested. At times there are traffic problems from the township back as far as the AFCO meatworks heading east, and equally coming into Te Puke from the Tauranga side back to where you come off at Papamoa. So there's a lot of congestion there, and there's this busy activity. I mean, without straying off the subject, Te Puke has the major banks. It has doctors, lawyers, dentists, professional people, surveyors. I mean, it is a busy business town. In fact, a Tauranga person of note recently came one evening and said to me, there's more activity in Te Puke on a Tuesday night than there is in Tauranga.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're a busy place. So we just can't expect the regional council to solve all this. It's part of an integrated transport system.
Worship Mayor Dania, then there's Worship Mayor Luca. Mayor Dania.
Thank you, and thank you, Mark, for a great presentation and really selling Te Puke, which is your job after all. But thank you. I did want clarification on a couple of points you raised. Firstly, the number one road, you talk about safety issues. Are you talking about the plan for the cycleways, which we didn't quite manage to get over the line? You see that as a regional issue or a council issue?
Well, it's a council issue, but I mean, it's those people that live on number one road, and there are trucks going up and down. It's a long-standing issue. But because that's very much linked to the kiwi fruit industry and volume growth, I mean, I think it's more of a regional issue because, volumes continue to grow. And I actually think that it's not, the solution is not to say to the local council, you need to fix this. It has to have a regional lens on this because it's very much linked to industry.
So are you talking about having, through the RLTP, a major upgrade of that whole road?
Yep.
Right, okay. And the other one was, you talked about Old Coach Road. And I understand it's a key link in the network. So again, are you talking about a regional lens of upgrading that? Or
well, I think I just made the point today because there is a lot of movement of traffic and freight through that area, and it runs parallel to a state highway. And if the state highway is out of action, there's a lot of reliance on that road.
So it's a resilience driver for upgrading it.
Yeah, I think resilience is a great word.
Go. Thank you.
Worship Mayor Luca.
Yeah, Mark, thanks very much for your presentation. Yeah, you made a very good case for me to move to Te Puke, but
You're always welcome.
I'd have to find a job there. You said that you're adding, if I heard correctly, 250 hectares of additional cultivated land every year.
Correct.
I looked up the Te Puke land area, it's about 13.4 square kilometres, but I guess that's talking about the township, because at that rate, you'd fill up all of Te Puke in 3 years.
No, this is east of Te Puke.
Right.
Is where the growth is.
How many years can you add 250 hectares before it comes to an end?
Well, it's the ability of Zespri to sell the fruit internationally. And so if the demand is such, there'll be continued growth.
Right, but what land area are we talking about?
Oh, thousands of hectares from Te Puke east that can be developed.
Yeah.
Currently a lot of dairy farming, and there has been dairy farm conversion to kiwi fruit.
Yeah, you don't know precisely how many thousands.
Well, I can give you those numbers. I mean, we have them in a document, but I just don't have it with me.
Okay, all right. Be interesting.
I'm happy to send that through to the committee.
Thank you.
But ahead of time, Mark, so is there any other things you'd like to do to pitch Te Puke to us?
Well,
You've done a
just,
pretty good job so far, but
just,
while you're on a roll.
I just think when people make submissions to regional council or to other, governing bodies, that you give every sensible consideration to sensible residential growth, sensible commercial growth, because we have things in front of regional council now around commercial growth. And rest assured that people in Te Puke that are looking to develop things will always endeavour to mitigate risk.
Honourable Ken Shirley.
On that point, if I ask again, Mark, is there a shortage of industrially zoned land available around Te Puke? Given, you've got the commercial industrial with the truck parking and truck bases, that type of thing, but has your group done any assessment of the shortage of industrial land?
Yeah, so there'll be growth at Rangiuru, which would be, I think, more sophisticated, larger scale, medium scale business. But the township, when I talk about service industries, are very much restricted. There's nowhere to go. So there is a shortage, and there is an opportunity currently in Te Puke to develop perhaps 20 or 30 hectares. So yeah, we need to be enhancing that service capability with industrial land in the township.
And previous examples around the country, when you develop something like the Rangiuru Business Park, you actually generate an even greater demand for more industrial land as the service industries develop around the park activities. So that would be a trend that we've seen around the country. The other question I had is, you mentioned, I think I heard you say that for every hectare of new kiwi fruit, there's 1.5 jobs created. To the 250 hectares per year of expansion is what we're seeing and projecting. That's 375 new jobs every year.
Correct, and that's either picking fruit or processing fruit, or being involved in some sort of service activity to make that work.
And is that all jobs, including the sort of the RSE short-term jobs?
Yeah, that's all jobs, including RSEs, short-term workers.
That's full-time equivalents? Or?
Yeah, that's sort of the number, around 1.5. And then of course this kiwi fruit industry used to be like 3 or 4 months, pack the fruit and off it goes, but now that's extended out to about 9 months. So particularly from March through kind of August, Te Puke has thousands of people that come to work.
Some of these jobs would be out around the Pongakawas and the new development tends to be out that way.
Precisely, because the growth that Mayor Luca alluded to is Te Puke and East. And so that's where the work is, that's where the jobs are. And so the rural developments, like I talked about Pongakawa, small development of 130 homes, very, very important that we try to enhance all of that and make it work.
Panelists, any further questions or points of clarification? Councillor Shirley, they're having a problem picking up some of your comments on live stream. So most of your comments are directed to that. It might pay to move your microphone. Yeah, don't want to miss any comments. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thanks very much.
Good to have you here. Good pitch for Te Puke. Now, Roger, we will meet your needs this morning. So you tell us, are you comfortable sitting there, or you are? And I've asked everyone not to put their hands over their mouths while posing questions to you. So, but you just tell us what we need to do to meet your needs, and then we'll kick it off. Anything in particular?
Good morning to the Chair, the Transport Committee. Thank you very much for allowing me to come to speak on the behalf of all the assistance dogs within New Zealand. I do reports to the government departments. I'm also the Welfare Disability Select Committee for the Disabled for Civil Defence right through New Zealand. So it's a big role. It's all volunteer. So with the disability assist dogs, so far we've had the numbers have increased, and that's increasing daily on public transport. So far we have 157 service dogs since 2009 to 2024. We've also had the first service dog in New Zealand in 2023, where it hit the Fair Go team, And it was pointed out there that the service dog was removed by police. After contacting the AT, Auckland Transport, we found out that the person had a verbal trespass notice given to them for having an assistance dog on a public transport. So we're the first in New Zealand to ever have it, what I know of so far. With the one of the disability assist dogs in 2023, there was 15 service dogs being refused on public transports around New Zealand, and Tauranga was one of them. It's sad to say. What I understand and what I have been told, and so is one of my other team members, one of the Downers team saw this was happening on Cameron Road, where a service dog was refused to be picked up by the bus driver and kept on driving. That was poor to see, and apparently it's happened more than one occasion. This Downer worker, we end up managed talking about my service dog when I was over here in Pack and Save. So he was quite distressed and that sort of stuff there. So I've told him to come into the regional council or council to make a formal complaint about what's been happening on the public transport system, what he's observed. So I'm not sure if this person has done it or not. But he picked up his gear because he was working on site, and this was roughly around about 5-ish, 6 o'clock PM. So on the public transports in 2022, we were the highest in the record, hit 45 service dogs being refused on public transports in New Zealand. And that was extremely high, but I'm glad to see it came down to 15 last year. We also have 4 already this year being refused on public transports, and most of them is in Auckland and Christchurch. Taking animals on public transports, we've had pet dogs rushing at service dogs, and the people with service dogs have been asked to leave first off the public transports. I think that is wrong. They're there to assist a person with a disability, and it's happening more and more often, especially in Auckland. With all these public transports are happening around New Zealand, is to take into account that all service dogs do not need to be on a leash or being put on muzzle because they're assisting a person on a public transport, because we've got the exemptions. If pet dogs go on the public transports, got to be mind aware that some dogs are very aggressive. It's bad enough with other people when we're hopping on the public transports with our service dogs, the rudeness, the comments, and the verbal abuse we get, and also our service dogs getting kicked on the public transports in New Zealand, and it is high, and other people haven't recorded it. From my own experience, I went down to Christchurch, jumped on the public transports. The bus attitude people were very rude. They told me that I'm not welcome on the public transport, even if I showed them my ID. It's quite rude. This is what we're getting from some drivers around New Zealand. One of the bus drivers took off, slammed on his brakes before I got to the disability seat. It jarred my back and my knee, and I did not know where my service dog was at the time, and I could see the back upgrade steps on the bus. I nearly hit that. Christchurch Council didn't want to know until I went to ACC. It's a huge problem, what is happening around New Zealand. But in Auckland, it's also been happening up in there as well, where a bus driver pushed a service dog person off the bus and he was blind. Most of them are rule for the blind has been demonstration for having a service dog within New Zealand. That is totally disgusting. Because they can't identify the driver, they're getting away with it because they can't prove it was a he or a she. This is the problem we're having in New Zealand, and some laws need to be changed about it. I've been working with Louise Upston since 2016 on about the disability assist dogs, and also with the Disability Select Committee for New Zealand in government level. The priority seats on public transports for the elderly, people who are with disability, and mothers with new pushchairs and that sort of stuff there should be more considerate to get onto these areas. I know there's one lady who got told on a public transport he had to buckle herself in where she couldn't. That was wrong in itself because it's a bus driver's job to make sure the person is safe on their bus. It's safety issue. So with the ACC, there is a link there with the many accidents that bus drivers are taking off too fast before people get into the seats, and quite a bit of injuries on that side there. That was a disturbing area to read as well. You can Google that on ACC on public transports. So there's quite a few things. Now, I did send a list of the 8 organisations with photos and that sort of stuff there. Between the Disability Assist Dogs, my group, and the AT, we decided to draw up a new plan and is now in Auckland Transports. So the drivers can see which organisations the service dogs with, what they have. All service dogs should have a civil defence tag, and we're pushing that to be mandatory right through New Zealand. At the moment, it's not compulsory, but 97% of the service dogs has got it. That's what I understand. The disability aside and that sort of stuff there with the verbal abuse from the bus drivers is uncalled for in New Zealand. Attitude needs to be changed, and it's up to all of us to do the educating. Teach them. I'm happy to come and do some training to help them in our area. So that's an offer is already there. So they're well aware of what's actually going on out there, so they can make a better place for everyone and who's enjoying the public transports. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Roger. I think you'll be delighted that you've been talking to a captive audience, and you've got the likes of Councillor Von Dadelson here, who's the chairman of our Public Transport Committee, and you've got various members here who've got a high national profile in the disability sector. You know, I can say I did at one stage, and also Glenn Crowther over there has got a high profile in the disability sector, but and also you've got you're listening to you today as the public transport director and a senior transport planner. So, but cutting to the chase, what's the problem? Is it the bus companies? It's the education of the drivers, because you have the exemptions, you have the dispensations, the service dogs are entitled to be there. What's the problem?
A lot of the problem is with the bus drivers and some of this. You could say the supervisors, the attitudes and that sort of stuff there around people with disabilities, at the elderly. It's the attitude we need to change. That's the problem in New Zealand. If everyone, you know, okay, you've got a problem with your leg and that sort of stuff there, how can we assist if you need assistance? And it's to make sure someone is safe on the public transport. You know, they get into their seat first before the bus takes off. With the bus taking off and slamming on the brakes to hurt a person, that is uncalled for.
I pass to Mayor Denia and Mayor Luca. Michael Seaborn would just like to make a statement to you. So,
thank you very much for your comments there, and we're happy to follow up on that particular complaint. And also, our drivers are trained in this sort of matter. We're happy to keep continuously reinforcing this, so that behaviour is our expectation as people who run passenger transport. So that is certainly our expectation of what our drivers should behave like.
Worship Mayor Denia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's clear to me, as Mike has just said, that it's education is key to this, and I would hope that our council continues with that, as Mike has suggested. But I did want to just pick up on one issue, and that is there a need for better clarity on which dog is a service dog? You said that 97% have a civil defence badge, and I'm guessing there's a misconception that service dogs only include guide dogs, but there are broader categories, I think, and I think there are possibly categories which aren't included, which may not be covered by the law, but I'm sure you know a lot more about that. But is there a need for a more comprehensive identification and of what is a service dog and how they may be identified?
Okay, well, the 8 organisations within New Zealand under the Dog Control Act, under Section 5, Schedule 5, and that's what's up there. You've got the blind, mobility, epilepsy, canine medical detection, canine search and medical detection, assistance dogs, perfect partners, and hearing dogs for the deaf. Those are the 8 organisations, and that's in the copy that I've sent to council, and that with all the photos, with all the service dogs within New Zealand. Now, they all have to have their jackets. We all carry our licence with us at all times, so they can be produced, so the drivers can see it. This is where I come into different areas, and that's what stuff there, because I can show them the app. This is here what it's worked, or a manual ID card if the app goes down. Because it's all new, we're still having problems with it, like anything else, technology. There are a lot of fake service dogs with Velcro, and saying service dogs or therapy dogs. They are classed as pets. They're not under the government legislation because they don't belong to one of the 8 organisations within New Zealand. So there's a huge big difference here. That's the information I've already sent to you guys there. So that's a huge problem. We have exactly the same thing in Auckland, where a service dog was never registered in the civil defence flooding zone, but a fake service dog was. So they had more rights than the registered service dogs. So that was a area that we're working down with Wellington on these sort of things there. So at the moment, I'm reading the report from the Civil Defence of Napier, flooding down there, the storm they had in Gabriel. So I'm going through that one there at the moment. So having a bit of a read through that.
Roger, I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Worship Mayor Luca, then the Honourable Ken Shirley. Mayor Luca.
Hi, Roger. Yeah, I'm actually barking up the same tree as Mayor Denia. I'm wondering about the identification of a service dog, because how big is the tag? And the jacket that you mentioned, is that on the person or the dog? I've
Definitely on Harper.
Might be a stupid question.
Harper's down here. He's 8 years old. He has the yellow jacket. And it's the hearing dog for the deaf of New Zealand. I'm happy to show you the app that we have.
Yeah, I guess you sort of answered me that it's very easy to identify a service dog.
Yes.
There's no chance that these drivers that are biffing people off buses can misidentify.
Yep, you can definitely tell if it's a mobility dog with a person, and they have to have their jackets on when we're out in public.
So if the bus companies had a proper sort of training of their drivers, that
Yes.
would potentially solve that issue.
That
I mean,
hopefully it
even
will
if they
reduce
sent
it
their
right down.
drivers a letter and says,
Yeah.
you know,
We
Take-
also have the same problem with the taxis,
Hmm.
Uber companies, and that sort of stuff there. It's quite high.
again, a simple letter from regional council or some other authority
Yeah.
instructing them to take care with people who have service dogs and service dogs, that should do the trick.
Hopefully,
Mm.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Honourable Ken Shirley.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Seems to me that, carrying on from a comment that our public transport director made, is that our expectations of our drivers, and I think the point that Mayor Luca just made, but in reality, they're not our drivers. They're employed by a service provider, a contractor. So my question is, which perhaps our director can help us with, we're talking about attitude, performance, culture, behaviour of drivers. Is there any provision in the contracts that gives a clear indication of what our expectation is from the driver's behaviour and performance? Because again, it comes back to, rather than a letter, it should be formalised in the contract and suitably enforced. So perhaps our director could help us on that point.
Happy to answer the question through you, Mr. Chair. Our expectations are very clear. That in the contract we have outlined what our training program is for drivers so that they meet those expectations, and those expectations change over time. So we regularly train our drivers on any kind of new requirements. Any new drivers are trained by our team on the expectation of council, particularly with regard to people with disability and how they may assist, or what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. There is a growing sometimes confusion around what dogs are allowed on the bus, but it's very clear that service dogs are, and the expectations around bus drivers and their attitudes towards that is also very clear. That training also includes general members of the public and other incidents and other things like that. So we take it pretty seriously around how our drivers are to behave with the public, and we do that on a very active basis at all times. We respond to incidents wherever we get them, and we think that there is an operator that isn't perhaps meeting those standards, and we address those fairly quickly. So I think our monitoring is as high as we can get it, but of course we do need our public and our customers to tell us about things so that we can act on those things. So the more information we have, the better able we are to react to those situations.
So when I get a complaint and that sort of stuff there, I turn and ask them, have they gone to council? Have they put a letter into the bus company as well? CC both of them into them. If they don't get any response back, say within 14 to 21 days, then get hold of us, and then we'll rewrite a lovely letter and see if we can try and make some wonderful changes. And that's what it's all about. It's helping each other to overcome an obstacle.
Roger, we are a regional council, so in terms of the issues and the headaches that you encounter around this, is there any particular part of the Bay of Plenty that gives you more angst than another? Like, is the major problem Rotorua, or is it Whakatane, or Aporiki, or Tauranga? Can you just give us a feel?
Well, because we've new started up, the Disability Assist Dogs Advocate, we're only new, so we've only just done to get more and more clients coming and finding out what's actually happening on different things. Like we can try and have the one on the say the doctor surgery, where since service dogs have been refused in, but they've issued out a form for them to get a service dog, but then they refused the service dog to come in. Service dogs have been attacked in New Zealand. It's quite high in the CBD, being rushed at. That is a huge concern in itself. We've been rushed at 4 times in 1 year And the council didn't want to know about it until it went all in writing, because I submitted everything in writing.
Council in particular, can you tell us, share with us?
That's South Waikato District Council.
Oh,
Also in Hamilton as well, where I've been being rushed at by pet dogs in the CBD. It's worst off I'm also the chairperson for the Business Association in Tokoroa, where dogs are pooing on the streets and they're taking the dog's lovely mess inside the shops. And then we get the blame for it because we're walking in there with a service dog. That is quite high around New Zealand as well. So that's something you guys need to have a bit of a think about of the dog's messes, what's been happening. Yeah. So there's quite a few things. You know, it's 120 service dogs been attacked, and most of them have been in since 2022 to now. So that's very, very high. That's some of the records that we've got. You know, especially when the council has refused service dogs in. That is shocking. We've now changed some attitudes within some of the councils. They can't legally do that because we're under the Dog Control Act and the Bill of Rights and the Human Rights Act. So they've gone, So I'm trying to do some educating because I don't like to see people get fined. Because what I understand, it's anything from $3,000 to $10,000 fine or 5 years imprisonment.
thank you for presenting today, Roger. Can I just speak on behalf of the panel and say it didn't need a submission to the RLTP to fix this problem. I see my colleague, Councillor Von Dadelson there taking copious notes. So I know if he was afforded the opportunity, he'd swing in behind and take this on board. So you have that assurance from us. Okay, thank you, and to your dog for coming here today. And
thank you very much.
I hope you feel you had a good hearing. So
yes,
okay,
and it's the education. If you don't know it, you can't fix it.
okay, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take an adjournment, everybody, until 10:50. Elliot, I see you've arrived down the back there. Now, there's tea and coffee for you, the general public at the back. So we're going to all disappear downstairs now. So leave you here on your own. So I also invite the staff that are here, Amanda, Tapu, Oliver, Andrew, Michael, Nikki, to join us downstairs. And we'll be back at 10:50. Welcome back, everybody. The next submission is from Health New Zealand. And Elliot, I understand you're joined by Renee and Samara, or they're joined by you, or you're joined by them. So all three of you come forward. So colleagues, this is Elliot Fenton, Renee Bulkaway and Samara O'Neill with a submission on behalf of Health New Zealand. And before they start, I'd just like to note that we did have an apology from Dr. Phil. So he couldn't be with us today due to other commitments in the health sector. So the floor's yours.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for inviting us to speak to you today. My name is Samara O'Neill, as you've said. I'm a public health registrar. This is Renee Bulkaway and Elliot Fenton, who are health improvement advisors. We are speaking on behalf of Health New Zealand Whatu Ora. Health New Zealand values the opportunity to work with Regional Council to achieve a bold and progressive transport system, one that prioritises the movement of people to the places where they live, work, learn and play. We have an active role in improving the health of communities in the Bay of Plenty region, especially for Māori, Pacific and low-income populations. As presented in our written submission, we would like to see some key changes to the draft Regional Land Transport Plan to realise a safer, more efficient and better designed transport system. A transport system that promotes the movement of people, not cars, offers gains in health. Most importantly, a transformed transport system will help reduce emissions. We are in a climate emergency as declared by the New Zealand Government in 2020. Transport contributes 17% of Aotearoa's total greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, a transport system that reduces dependence on motorised vehicles presents a crucial opportunity to take meaningful action to reduce these emissions. The longer we wait to act on climate change, the worse the impacts of climate change will be. We encourage and support the Regional Council to be bold and to prioritise people and the environment over roads and cars.
Health New Zealand would like to see the following three key changes to Bay of Plenty's Regional Land Transport Plan. First, implement an equitable transport system. And second, integrate planning with land use planning. And thirdly, focus on people rather than roads, cars, or future growth. We see these three changes as offering gains in community and fauna well-being. Transport is an important part of living a well-connected life, of getting to the places we need to and want to in a way that is affordable, dignified, and safe. The Regional Council has an opportunity to implement a transport system that helps reduce health inequities. In Aotearoa, people living on lower incomes and people living with disabilities have poorer access to private vehicles. Inaccessible or unaffordable access to transport negatively impacts economic and education opportunities. Additionally, accessing healthcare can be a barrier for those who are disadvantaged by the transport system. And we know this is a significant issue for rural communities within the Bay of Plenty. A transport system that achieves equity is a transport system that prioritizes and promotes active and public transport modes and subsidizes public transport for those on low incomes. Now, I'm going to get you to close your eyes. It's a little interactive. Please, everybody, close your eyes. You guys, everyone, thank you. Now imagine a busy intersection in Tauranga or Rotorua or somewhere you're more familiar with. Now imagine your 80-year-old mom, dad, grandmother, grandfather, or aunt, uncle, and alongside them is your 8-year-old daughter, son, niece, nephew, or perhaps grandchild. There are all kinds of vehicles, including cars, logging trucks, zooming past your loved ones, standing on the side of the road waiting to cross. Is it enjoyable and safe for them to cross at that intersection? Is it an age-friendly space? Chances are you might say no to both of those questions. You can open your eyes now. Thank you. The 8 and 80 approach is to transform places so they are accessible for everyone. Children should be able to safely ride their bikes and walk to school, and older members of the community should be able to safely move through their place of residence. Improving cycling and pedestrian infrastructure are ways to achieve this. Implementation of a transport system that's equitable provides benefits for health and well-being for everyone.
Transport and land use planning go hand in hand. Well-designed transport systems require well-designed cities and towns, and both impact human and environmental health. Tauranga, Rotorua and Whakatane have wonderful places of nature and green space to walk, socialise and enjoy. But as seen in this photo, which I'm struggling to get up here, but yeah, clicker problem.
Help us on
Great,
its way.
thank you, thank you. But as seen as this photo that's just popped up, many of these spaces are occupied by cars and car parks. Tauranga in particular is an increasingly sprawling city, one that so often requires a car to get around. Cars affect air quality, and air quality is a pressing environmental health issue in the Bay of Plenty. Clean air is essential for good health and is taonga for Māori. The health and social costs of air pollution therefore are high. As presented in our written submission, the 2016 Health and Air Pollution Study estimated that air pollution contributed to over 3,300 premature adult deaths. Changing how we design cities and towns can improve health. High-density cities with ready access to schools, shops, places of work, and leisure activities are healthier cities. They have less air pollution, they promote physical activity, and are better places to live.
And our third key message, and one that is really important for the transport plan to focus on, people, especially current residents, rather than roads, cars, or efforts to further grow the city. That city, Tauranga, I guess.
Right. Need another, oh no, it's worked now, great. Bay of Plenty's current residents face significant transport challenges that will not be met by building more roads. Expanding the roading network induces demand for that network and results in generated traffic. Generated traffic is the extra traffic that occurs from road users choosing to travel at peak times because congestion initially is less. It is also the extra traffic that occurs from the new road appealing to new road users. As more people use the road over time, the benefits expected, i.e. the less congestion from the new road decreases and the costs to users and society increase. Put simply, if you build it, they will come. Or in the words of Lewis Mumford, an American urban planning specialist, building more roads to prevent congestion is like loosening your belt to prevent obesity. It won't work.
Bay of Plenty's mode share for active transport is low, lower than the national average. Health New Zealand would like to see more ambitious targets for increasing active and public transport modes. Active transport in particular offers good returns on investment. As presented in our written submission, Hastings and New Plymouth invested in walking and cycling infrastructure. This infrastructure, alongside promotion of these transport modes to the public, resulted in significant economic benefits. It is important the needs of current residents are met before looking to grow the city. Wellington provides an example of a place that has achieved high active and public transport mode share. If Tauranga's transport system was transformed and had similar results in mode share as Wellington, we would see approximately 50 less premature deaths each year from injury and air pollution through increased levels of physical activity. Internationally, Bay of Plenty ought to aspire to be like cities like Amsterdam and Copenhagen, where cycling is an integrated part of daily life.
The Bay of Plenty Regional Council has an opportunity to create a transport system that promotes population and environmental health. We recommend the plan prioritise equity, integrate transport planning with land use planning, and focus on current residents rather than roads, cars, or future growth. Health New Zealand looks forward to the opportunity to work with the Regional Council to develop a holistic transport plan, a plan that recognises the connections between transport, land use, and health, and fundamentally changes how our communities live and move. Thank you for the time, for listening to us today, and we invite any questions at this point.
Questions, colleagues? Is Worship Mayor Luca then Commissioner Selwood?
First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm not one for using superlatives very much, but I found it excellent. And some bits of it are really quite confronting, especially the bit on the number of people who have premature deaths as a result of air pollution, because New Zealand has this image of being clean and green, and to see those numbers is really quite striking, especially when we're putting so much resource into, Road to Zero, where our road deaths per million cars is down at sort of reached an asymptote at about 100. And yet we've got 3,500 people dying from air pollution. You've cited some studies there, which I haven't had a chance to look at. I'm just wondering how good they are. Is it ironclad?
So the study, sorry, have you?
Yeah.
So that's the Health and Air Pollution in New Zealand study, 2016, that was conducted by Kushel et al. And that was extensively peer-reviewed because the findings, particularly around the contribution of diesel vehicles to nitrogen dioxide emissions, were quite, like you said, confronting. So that they were extensively peer-reviewed to ensure that they are robust findings and have found to be. Again, the study's publicly accessible and as well worth a read. It also speaks to the number of hospital admissions, largely from cardiovascular and respiratory illness, and in particular, childhood asthma cases that are a result of air pollution in New Zealand. And so, like you said, I think it's really, it's somewhat incongruent with the image that New Zealand often presents, particularly internationally, of being clean and green, whilst knowing that air quality in some areas in particular are really impacting population health and health for children.
Yeah, I guess it's the perspective of looking at total risk and looking at, cost benefit analysis. You spend a lot of money to reduce a death here, but yet we turn almost a blind eye to this sort of thing, which is just because it's simply not convenient. But okay, well, thanks very much. Yeah.
Commissioner Selwood, then the Honourable Ken Shirley. Commissioner Selwood.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your submission. You emphasised in particular, I think, among a range of things, the importance of transport land use integration. And that has been a significant component of TCC's investment, particularly in Cameron Road Stage 1, which was designed to both make it safer for those people crossing that otherwise very busy arterial, but also to allow urban intensification in that corridor close to the CBD. Our next stage is Cameron Road Stage 2, which will continue that public transport, walking, cycling capacity in that corridor, with a view to enabling more intensification along that corridor and more live, work, play. And if you extend that then, and the reason for my commentary is around State Highway 29, which is perceived as being only a state highway project. And it is an important state highway project designed to enable interregional connectivity. But a key component of that will be the change of the existing state highway corridor when the new road goes in to a local road, which will then connect future greenfields urban development in Tauriko, where there will be live, work, play in that area, connecting on the State Highway 29 corridor existing to Cameron Road, right the way through to the CBD and across to the Mount. And that corridor accounts for 70% of the employment in the city region. So if we can have more density as well as greenfields linked to jobs, both there and through the corridor, then we're getting much better transport land use integration. That is a core component of the future growth of the city. Do you support that, or do you have an alternate view as to where that growth and how that land transport integration might be achieved?
I think you raise several key points, and it's obviously a balance that needs to be reached with developing the land that is available, but also developing the land that's currently being used in ways that are more efficient and safer and make for better places to live. I think a key point that we'd like to note is that the good returns on investment are to intensify the places that already have houses, have shops, have places of work, that offers good bang for buck. Whereas expanding the city, while noting that the corridor is going to be mode share, I think there are limits to how far a person can walk and cycle. And our goal is to really have, like Amsterdam and Copenhagen, people cycling to almost every activity, every appointment that they need to reach, and to be able to be socially connected by bike and walking. And I think because of some of the distances involved, that may be difficult if focus continues to be on greenfields developments, which are further away from places that are currently built up. But I appreciate that it's a tension that needs to be navigated and a really complex problem to solve. And Health New Zealand appreciates being part of the conversation and would like to help overcome some of these challenges that the Bay of Plenty faces. Renee or Elliot, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add as well with that. Where cycling and I guess walking aren't the easiest option with, say, that length, it's like, how are we moving or stepping away outside of things that promote car use and single occupant car use as well? That's the other important thing. This is how are we moving across the region as well? That's the other important thing.
Honourable Ken Shirley, then David from NZTA. Honourable Ken Shirley.
Oh, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your submission. Can I just confirm your submission is on behalf of Health New Zealand? It's a ministry, a department, an agency?
So we're Health New Zealand Whatu Ora, which is the public health system delivering healthcare in New Zealand. We are part of government.
And now, part of the Ministry of Health, in essence.
No, we're not part of the Ministry of Health. Well, we're part of government delivering the public health care service.
You're a full government agent.
Yes, yeah, and we're the National Public Health Service.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask you?
Sorry, this is the old Tweetiora, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the old
Can I ask you? Are you confident that your submission is consistent with government policy?
We are. It's been reviewed by several layers of management within the National Public Health Service and has been signed off by those managerial roles.
Okay. There's 2 points I'd like to explore in that regard. You started your submission, you called for more equitable transport systems. What does that actually mean? Does that mean that everybody has the same costs for transport?
Our goal is for transport to achieve equitable outcomes in terms of accessibility and affordability. With current inequities that we know exist, and certain populations that live in higher deprivation areas and are on lower incomes, I'm not sure that having the same cost for everyone across the board would achieve equity, because some people are starting from a different position. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Well, I'll explore it further. You're aware that public transport is massively subsidised by central government and local government. And the government policy of the day is to actually cut back, all the signals are to cut back on that subsidy and to reduce it and require more fare box recovery. That's why I asked, are you confident your submission is consistent with government policy? Point one.
We are aware of those intentions of government to roll back the subsidies. As a public health agency, we have to work to advocate for positive population health outcomes. And we've noted the concerns with rolling back subsidy on public transport, which is why we've included it in the submission.
So your unit opposes government policy, is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying, but I think we have some concerns about how public transport may be delivered.
Right. Now, the other point I had is you mentioned build less roads and more active transport, cycles, walking, footpaths, etc. Are you aware that the latest GPS, the government policy statement from NZTA, has reduced the funding for footpaths and cycling and is emphasising a return to the roads of national significance and more roads for the health of the economy. How does your submission fit with that?
I'd like to point out that I don't think we're saying build less roads. I think the most important part is we're saying is you can't build your way out of congestion. We're saying that be more effective in terms of the roads that are currently in use and how they can be utilised, not saying building less roads. It's about how they are effective to support multimodal transport that promotes physical activity is a huge essence of our submission. How that fits in with NZTAs, that's, again, as Samara was saying, formerly being the district health board that has now become the National Public Health Service, which is an operational arm of Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand. It's about advocating and making and pushing for the things that we believe are going to promote health outcomes and long-term health outcomes for all of those in New Zealand, and especially those that need more equitable outcomes, that are unable to access services, that are being treated to long-term health outcomes that we've witnessed in these research as well. So it's not about building less roads. It's about how we're being more effective with them as well.
Thank you.
It's Worship Mayor Luca, then it's Worship Mayor Denia. And, I beg your pardon, David, did you want to jump in here now? Because your name's been mentioned in dispatches, NZTA.
Yeah.
Do you want to go now?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's quite timely because I think Ken traversed some of the things I was curious to ask, and the answers have covered them. But obviously, I'm aware of the inherent tensions between the role of the various government agencies. But I'm curious whether you have a mission on the government policy statement, given how important that is in determining the activity classes and the extent to which central government will or won't be in a position to fund some of the aspirations that you talked about.
Sorry, you just cut out a wee bit at the start there. Can you just repeat your question?
So very briefly, have you made a submission on the government policy statement on transport? Did Te Whatu Ora make a submission? So
my understanding, but I would need to clarify, is that the National Public Health Service was aware of the government, is aware of the government policy statement, and was or is working on a submission, but that's not within our work stream or the work stream of my colleagues here. So I would need to check.
Yeah, our focus is regionally. So our focus, we fall within the Te Manawataki region. So that's Waikato, Taranaki, Bay of Plenty, Tairāwhiti and Taupo as well. So our focus is within that region, and that's where our work and jurisdiction is. Anything that specifically relates to government policies and government relations, that's further higher up within the National Public Health Service. That's outside of our work. So our focus is regional council and district councils when it comes to the policy input.
So
and what we can submit on.
My slightly garbled comment at the start probably was to Ken's point that many of these decisions are currently being made at a national level, not at a regional level. I mean, the government policy statement will determine what is available to be allocated to support this kind of activity. So hence my question about the submission at a national level. Ka pai, thank you.
No, I'd also like to add with that as well, David. Thank you for pointing out, there's a lot that's happening up at that higher systems level, at a higher governance that we don't have input on, and that we don't have, us personally, do not have the ability to be involved in, because that's not our role. Our role is advocating for what we want to see at our local level, at our regional level, because that's our primary focus. So just trying to, understand that there's a clear difference between our role and what we are doing within the Te Manawataki region versus at a higher governance level as well. Understanding that there is a lot of, as you mentioned, David, the funding and how everything's dictated by the high level of governance, but that's unfortunately not our place that we can input on.
Thank you.
Government is not divided. Government is government. And, you know, for a subset of government at whatever level to sort of say that they're not part of the overall big government picture is really just not acceptable in my view.
I'd like to point out that we're not saying that we're not a part of it. I'm saying that that's not within our ability to comment on it. It's not within our ability to have input on it. I'm simply outlining where our role sits, and I'm not saying that we're indifferent or that we're sitting different from that. I'm just saying our role and our job as the National Public Health Service of Te Manawataki within the focus of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council is to input what we'd like to see from a health and equity point of view of the long-term health outcomes that this transport plan will have.
Okay, His Worship Mayor Luca, followed by His Worship Mayor Denia. Mayor Luca.
Councillor Shirley's raised some interesting issues, but it's not the function of this forum to debate you and me. But anyway, we'll get into that later. I agree with you that it would be in an ideal world, we all should be walking and cycling. In my district, I see the opposite actually happening. 25% of our fleet is diesel utes. Now, EVs produce no tailpipe emissions and therefore don't directly damage the atmosphere, and that's it. Well, damage the atmosphere less. And that comes to what you've written here about health consequences. Yet the EV transition, which apart from transitioning us to a cleaner transport system, has effectively stalled because of, I guess, government policy. So what do you say about the role of electrification of transport then?
I think moving towards EV mode share is one part of the puzzle to solving this very complex problem. Like many complex problems, there's not going to be one fix that solves this. But I think what we're hoping to communicate and to present is that we're advocating for a shift in how we move. Moving by EV or by car is still not a particularly efficient way of moving a person, whereas cycling and walking are and public transport is. So I think EV has a role, but it's not going to be the magic bullet that gets us out of the climate emergency that we're in, or changes transport in a sufficient way to achieve emission reductions.
Final comments, His Worship Mayor Denia.
I note in our RLTP, our draft out RLTP, Objective 3, communities have access to an inclusive, equitable and reliable transport system. Now, from what I've heard, that is something that you would wholeheartedly support. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think the work on that we have done up to this point will adequately explain what is meant by equity in the transport context. But my question is, how should we, or indeed you, measure the link between your concerns on public health and our investment in transport?
I think that's a really good question, and I think one that public health often, I think, faces challenges in communicating or answering, because many of the outcomes that we're measuring occur over really long periods of time and are at a population level, so it can be inherently quite difficult to measure. And finding the connections between transport and health is really where our expertise lie and where we like to do our work. I think a key part is community-based research, asking participants in the community and residents in the community their experiences of accessing the transport system, how they find the transport system works for them. And I guess this is what this sort of forum does. So it's a good step towards achieving equity, because I think it has to be community focused. Elliot or Renee, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
So I think part of the issue, and perhaps you can comment on this, is we spend the money to improve transport, and the benefit is seen by the health service in reduced hospital costs or healthcare costs, whatever. So there's that disconnect, which we do have to bear in mind, but it's hard for us to weigh one up against the other because it's another organisation, agency, whatever that gets the benefit. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I agree. It's a real difficult tension to navigate. But I think the important point is that communities and populations that are well cost the state and public services less over many measurements. So investment in transport that promotes health at a population level, and particularly health for people that are currently worse off, offers significant gains, not just in reducing hospital costs, but to the state as a whole, because ill health is very expensive.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And coming up shortly is TCC. You may wish to, I don't know what your time constraints are, but they're coming up after the next submitter. So you may find that interesting to listen to TCC. So you're more than welcome to stay. So, but thank you again for your submissions. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. I think we've got some deadlines to meet this afternoon, so we won't be able to stay, but thank you for your time.
No, that's okay.
Yep.
That's fine. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we've got, is it Amy, Stewart and George? Have I got the names right? We have, right. Hauraki Express, Commissioner Selwood and I, we're working off 583 and 671. The rest are on 610 and 698. So Hauraki Express, everyone.
The clicker. Oh yeah, cool. There we go. Okay. Kia ora. I'm Amy Burke. I am a local living here in Tauranga, where I have a couple of businesses and am raising my young family. And I'm here today representing our family business along with my brother George, who's our head skipper, and my brother-in-law Stuart Thomas, who's our general manager. The founder and director of the business, Peter Burke, couldn't be here today, so he sends his apologies. So we are here today to present our submission that ferry transport should be included in the 10-year plan, and also to present our concept, which I think a few of you in the room are familiar with. This is a departure from conventional ferry transport. It's an innovative service, and we think that it would be really suitable for the Tauranga Harbour. So here we go. Hauraki Express is our family business, as I said, a marine business based up in Auckland. We do marine fueling, charter fishing, water taxi, and most recently a new ferry, Island Direct, that goes to Waiheke Island. Cool. So I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The region has seen significant population growth, and with this strong economic growth, that's putting pressure on our transport network. The city of Tauranga is where it is because of the harbour. This naturally beautiful and valuable resource provides an economic driver for the region, the Port of Tauranga. And while many of our people enjoy the harbour and its foreshore, for most people, the harbour just gets in the way. The Land and Transport Plan makes no reference to the Tauranga Harbour as an opportunity to expand the transport network, meet the growth of the region, and relieve pressure on existing infrastructure. So we like to call it the Blue Highway: no maintenance, no potholes. Now, we are familiar with the two feasibility studies that have been done, we kind of identified the high CapEx and the high annual OpEx. We assume that these did not go ahead or did not progress because of that. We're coming in with a different approach to these suggested feasibility studies to create a small, nimble and frequent fleet of ferries to transport passengers as well as cyclists. And we see cycling as a key part of it because it bridges that gap between their cycle from home to the ferry and then to their place of work or school. without having to venture on some dangerous routes. A lot of people we've talked to in the community have expressed safety concerns, and we know that there are some areas like Totra Street which people just don't want to even go down. So I think we can't underestimate the safety. I'm now going to hand you over to George, who's going to talk you through the boat design and how it would all kind of work.
So we plan to have a fleet of 4 ferries. Each of them will have a capacity for 24 passengers. Now there will be storage for 24 bikes as well. So of that 24 passenger, they can all be cyclists or they can all be standalone passengers. Using existing infrastructure as touched on by Amy, we plan to use wharves and boat ramps, obviously where available. And this is going to facilitate a healthy lifestyle option. And reducing the traffic there and carbon emissions. The ferries themselves will be about 12 metres long and built from aluminium. They'll be high speed and low wake. Obviously, in this harbour, we need that low wake. Outboard power to work with the drafts of where we're trying to get into, and those outboards eventually convert into electric or hydrogen or alternative fuels. And as touched on, 24 storage for bikes, ramp at the bow, so you can load at the boat ramps or ramps on the side, so you can load at wharfs as well, and only 2 crew, skipper and a deckhand.
Cool. So the routes and fares, initially we're looking at Tauranga, Salisbury Wharf to Pilot Bay, or the wharf over in the Mount, $5.80 each way, about a 15-minute trip. Future routes could include Tauranga to Omakaroa, and also the boats could go up to Matapihi or Mangatapu Bridge in terms of the water depth, although we would have some challenges with getting them under the rail bridge. So that is a possibility. What we are proposing is a public-private partnership. So Hauraki Express would fund the construction of the fleet. We would include it in our MTOP, so it was all compliant with the maritime rules. We would employ the crew and run the vessels. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a current ferry service up in Auckland. So we have experience in running ferries. We are proposing that the councils fund the annual operating costs, including finance costs, but these would be offset by fares collected by the passengers. The council would make the existing infrastructure available for our use, and would integrate the ferry service into the transport network, including the BEE card ticketing system. And together we would market cycling and walking as connected by ferries as a positive thing, healthy, sustainable and necessary means of transport. So that really fits into that whole mode shift and getting people off the roads and out of cars. So the numbers, we are starting with so 2 ferries to start with. That would be just under 500 passengers a day at 50% capacity. So an operating cost of, say, round the shortfall, I should say, would be around $1.2 million in terms of the investment. So per passenger, that's $5.60. Just to give you a comparison, the per passenger subsidy in Auckland is $7.12. The public benefit, so the benefit cost ratio, which is 3 parts, the cost of roading, so emissions, accidents, providing and maintaining roads and running the roads, part 1. Part 2, the cost of congestion, wasting time and loss of productivity as well as frustration. And then the opportunity cost for a reduction in spend on health, because this supports a healthy health and well-being by using this service, divided by the public costs, so the subsidy. So we've got $1.73 in the positive, and then a reduction in carbon emissions by 212. And that's just, you can obviously see the other numbers there if the fleet increases and we go to more passengers. So we're working up to around 1,000 a day. So just some final comments. This is a departure from conventional ferry transport, as I've already said. It combines commuter needs with recreational activity and tourism. Tauranga becomes a true harbour city, not just a port, and our residents feel really connected to the harbour. Just to give you a couple of examples of where, they've run successful campaigns to get people cycling and out of cars. In Vancouver, they increased cycle trips as a percentage of all trips from 4 to 7% in 3 years, and Brussels from 3% to 10% in 4 years. Enhances the great cycleways that we already have in the region, provides first to last zero emission travel, debt on the public balance sheet, the private balance sheet, and the public cost is limited to net operating cost after fares recovered, no capex or infrastructure costs, and requires no resource consents. So finally, our submission to the Land and Transport Plan, we recommend that the Transport Plan includes ferry transport under the regional transport system to be established on the Tauranga Harbour, and the development of a ferry service on the Tauranga Harbour supports our transition to a more sustainable system to minimise the environmental impacts as per the transport priorities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amy. Stuart and George, panelists, any Commissioner Selwood.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I signalled, I think the last time I saw the presentation, I'm very interested in this concept. I do have a few questions. The first is, if there are fewer bikes, does that mean you can take more passengers?
Yes, yeah. And we actually discussed this just this morning, because if it was to go, say, to a trial, you might work out, hey, people aren't using bikes as much, let's remove some bikes and have more passenger capacity. So
assuming the demand is there, then for passengers, then your subsidy will be lower. Your subsidy requirement will be lower. More patrons.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
You mentioned that in the public-private partnership that your company would cover the capital cost of the craft. But does your OPEX include depreciation of that capital sum or not?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And then, so effectively that means that the public sector, or the region in this case, would carry the demand risk on the project and eventually repay the capital via depreciation. Yep. Okay, no, that's fine. Just clarifying that matter.
Worship Mayor Luca, then David, NZTA. Mayor Luca.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, great idea. Why don't we already have it? Just a question for around connections, because it's all very well having this direct route, but especially for people who don't have bikes, they've got to get to the ferry. So have you thought about those connections and, dare I say it, parking spaces at your terminal or launch area? Is that kind of covered in your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the bike part fits into it. We are aware of capacity issues, like, in Omokoro, we know that they looked at putting car parking in, but we don't want to, we're looking at the bigger picture, and that we want to encourage people to get out of their cars Just to give you like a bit of an idea, I don't know if this answers the question, but this might be of interest. So up in Auckland, Waiheke Island has a population of 10,000, and they do 2.3 million trips a year. Devonport, 1.8 million trips, and the catchment is 21,000. And then Gulf Harbour, which has quite a long ferry route, that catchment is about 15,000. So we hadn't, probably that's not our area of expertise, looking at what we're covering in that is that biking kind of provides that piece of the puzzle, I guess.
Thank you.
David, NZTA, then back to Commissioner Selwood. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but Mia Luca asked I was curious about. Actually, I am curious about the methodology for the BCR calculation, and where that came from, whether that's comparable to passenger transport, other passenger transport, bus services, etc.
To be honest, we just, kind of Googled things and worked that out ourselves. So there's not a lot of theory behind that. And I think that would be something that, could be looked at in more depth and if we were to progress.
Yeah, you could test that with Mike and his team at Bay of Plenty Regional Council. But look, I applaud the vision. Thank you.
No, it's certainly a different approach. Exciting. Commissioner Selwood, then the Honourable Ken Shirley.
Sorry, I did forget to ask a question earlier. You've modelled this on 50 to 65% occupancy.
Yeah.
How does that compare with Island Direct? What sort of number are you operating up there?
Over to Stu for that one.
We see this service as being a bit different to Island Direct because there is no alternative transport means at the moment. So with Island Direct, we're having to change people's behaviour to come from the competition as Fullers or Sealink, whereas this one, they're either finding another means of transport at the moment, or we can change their behaviour to come on this proposed ferry.
Do you know what the occupancy rate of the combined offering for Waiheke, if you took Fullers, what sort of occupancy do they run at? Any idea?
We don't have their numbers for that. They are a different model again though, where they run big ferries. They've got 400 seat ferries, whereas for Island Direct we're 73 seat capacity. So again, smaller, more frequent, more personalised service.
I guess also just to add to that, with the two boats, we're looking at 500 people a day. I know a few of you have heard me say this before, but 1,000 cups of tea stage. So talking to a lot of people in our community, the response has been incredibly positive. And we've just had so many people from, people saying, oh, I'd use it to commute, I'd use it to take my family for a day trip in the weekend. We've had support from Tourism Bay of Plenty. So, we've got to make up those 500 people across the board. It's not just a commuter service.
Ken Shirley, then His Worship Mayor Denia.
Yes, thank you for the submission. Certainly very exciting given the characteristic of the Tauranga Harbour and the development. And I'm sure at some point there will be a good ferry service. But I'd just like to explore the CapEx and the OpEx, and particularly in relation to the reports that have been done quite recently, because your model is quite different and quite contrasting to that. I noticed you said that you would use the existing wharves and boat ramps, whereas the previous study was based on that they were inadequate and you need substantial CapEx for boat ramps, and the point that Commissioner Selwood made with shelters, parking and all the rest that you would have to do to be providing a commuter service. So that was that aspect. But my recall is from those previous studies, the Omokaroa fare was going to be over $60 per trip, assuming a 20% mode share. And given that our public transport bus services don't get anything like that, how on earth would the ferries get anything to match that, and that was with a $60 a fare, which is virtually unaffordable, I think, in most people's mind. And then you'd have to say, well, it'll be competing with the buses. We're trying to get the mode shift onto the buses. The Crown and Region's investing almost billions in terms of the Takitumu North with a 4-laning to Omokoroa, and sort of the potential concept of a good bus service with dedicated bus lanes potentially like Auckland. But this would really be eating into that mode share. So there's a lot of headwinds on these sorts of issues of just how it would work. And the other key point was the $8 a fare, taking the Omokoroa one, is that the total, would that cover the total OPEX, or is that the subsidy required?
So that is the fare that the passenger would pay, and then there's the subsidy that would. Oh, sorry, could you?
Well, I'm just trying to work out what is the total OPEX in terms of what would the fare, forget the subsidies.
Yeah.
What would the fare be to cover your OPEX and CAPEX on a service, for example, say to Omokoroa? Because it was $60 a plus on 20% mode share in that previous study. I was just wondering what your analysis was.
Well, I think that there were two things that we kind of identified with the Omokoroa route, and that was like the length of the trip initially that they had to do with the bigger ferries. So our ones can actually, we're pretty confident that we can, with this particular design, we can go directly, have a direct route even at low tide. So that cuts out a lot of the time. Yeah, probably.
I think I'll just step in as well. I think that they had bigger ferries, more staff, obviously more, they wanted more facilities at the other end. So overall, they're spending a lot more money on that one route than what we're planning to do. We're 2 crew, smaller boat, less fuel, go any tide, just simple is good.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a no frills boat.
Final comments is Worship Mayor Daniel.
Councillor Shirley has covered part of my point, which was how confident are you that the existing infrastructure can be used by your ferries without significant further upgrade?
Pretty confident, we've been looking around. The idea with these ferries, obviously being outboard, we can get into these boat ramps and the wharfs and pontoons around. It's not a big high ferry, so we can use these pontoons down the side here. It's as we said, it's simple.
My other question was, have you considered going either directly or en route to service Matakana Island?
We hadn't looked at that. I think because there is the current service, and probably just like being a local and having a husband who goes over there surfing and things, I don't know if it would be something that the locals on Matakana Island would be that into, having a whole lot of tourists turn up at their island. But it could certainly be done if it was, something.
I was more thinking servicing their needs rather than tourism as such, but because the existing car ferry is, there's only a few sailings per day, and can be quite slow at low tide. So I was just thinking that might be helpful for them. But this is an exciting prospect, and be interesting to see where it goes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I think you've heard all the positive comments, and it's a fresh, different approach, and we commend you for it. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
We now move to Tauranga City Council, and Commissioner, you and I are off 726. Everyone else is off 753. If they'd like to come forward, and because of the importance of you to this process, we can give you upwards of 25, 30 minutes if you so wish. NZTA have dropped out for reasons that have been explained. So you're on your own for half an hour.
I shouldn't need that long, hopefully, unless there's questions. Basically, so the submission hopefully talks for itself. So hopefully everyone has read that. We're taking that as read. So essentially, we just have one slide, which is this one. So, like I say, we're taking as read the submission, and we want to thank the Bay Plenty Regional Council for the process and the hard work in drafting this document and the inclusive nature of the process to date. We were very well involved in the process and happy with how it went. A couple of things in the document we just need to note is the prioritisation and the numbers within that document are subject to change. We're due, the plan is to adopt the TCC LTP on the 22nd of April, and then obviously the GPS has not been finalised yet, so that may result in further changes as well. So just to note that. Uncertainty around the funding, again, not exclusive to TCC, but around Waka Kotahi process and around NZTA not being able to commit funding to TSP projects through all phases. And then more recognition of the T5 major projects, which are very important to achieving the local and regional objectives, as noted in the RLTP document. So the note there was just around that they should potentially be given more preference or highlighting the fact of their significance to the region. And while we're saying that the prioritisation might change within this document, those top 5 are relatively secure in the fact that we are expecting them to align to the new GPS once it's finalised. And the next slide just details what those top 5 are, if anyone is unaware. And that's pretty much me. And I'll take any questions.
Mate, we were prepared to give you half an hour, weren't you?
There might be a few questions. Maybe we will be here. Who knows, right?
Is Worship Mayor Denia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note your request for prioritisation of the T5 major projects. Can you remind us where they sit already in the prioritisation list? Because
they currently are already the highest priority. So we're happy with the prioritisation of those. We don't expect that to change. It's just more emphasis on how significant they are, and then that follow-on question around the funding risk that exists just generally through the process. At this point, we can't confirm funding until it's confirmed.
I just say that because I have heard that there is some concern at TCC having quite a big bite of this cherry.
Yeah.
And to prioritise further may be politically awkward.
Just note this may be one of the last occasions you saw Councillor Winters and I alive, okay? So, any further comments? The Honourable Ken Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. I see in your bullet points there that you note the inclusion of smart trip variable road pricing. We're all very conscious of the funding dilemma and the wicked problems we have. Could you just brief us what the TCC, where you're at in terms of developing or progressing or moving towards variable road pricing?
Details sitting behind that I can't really speak to right now. We could come back to you on some of that stuff. The inclusion of the note therein, that is just that it has been noted in the GPS and therefore it is being explored and we will be looking into it. So again, I can't, and TCC can't comment until that GPS is finalised and we have direction on that. And then again, the funding question as well around how much funding we have actually to support that. But just to note that it is being thought of and it is a major thing going on in the background at TCC.
Commissioner Selwood.
Yeah, I can help there. Through our LTP deliberations, and we're yet to confirm them, but the basic lie of the land is that due to the level of opposition that was expressed across the community around progressing the proposal, or wasn't really a proposal, the concept, that we are not going to go to a business case, which would have been the next step in that process. However, we recognise the significance of the funding gap that has to be bridged in order for the investment level to occur. And so we are very keen to work with both central government, NZTA, and other councils like Auckland, Wellington, that are also exploring road pricing to investigate how we might address those issues that have been raised by the community in an equitable way. And so we've committed $500,000 per year over 3 years as our contribution to the work that's necessary to do that analysis and undertake that process. So hopefully we can partner with potentially NZTA, MOT or other councils in whatever form to see if we can find solutions to. We won't solve them all, but I'm sure there is much that we could do to mitigate the impacts that were raised by the community. In the end, between us all, we're going to have to find a way to bridge the funding gap. And if it's not variable road pricing or road pricing or tolling in some shape or form, that leaves us with maybe some value capture options, which we know the government's exploring, or massive increases in taxes and rates, because there's not a lot of levers you can pull. Either users pay or taxpayers pay, or maybe there's some sort of return out of development, but I can't see beyond that.
Just comment, 85% of the polling opposed the introduction of GST, and that opposition disappeared on the first week.
Any other comments, panelists? Oh, it's
Probably won't be able to answer me, but it sort of aligns with Mayor Denya's comments. Once you've done your reprioritisation thing, have you got any idea whether the arrow will point up or down in terms of your funding requests?
It's not something I can answer, and when until we know, we don't. Yeah, until we know, we don't know. However, and potentially there may not be a significant change. All I'm doing is highlighting the fact that
could change.
It could change. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the rest of us need to know if we have to sharpen our knives.
Thank you for your submission, and we fully acknowledge that you're a major player in this space. So we're not being flippant. We do.
No, and thanks for your time.
We wish you all the best as this process goes forward. So,
thank you.
Glenn, you're on stage. Glenn, everybody, well known to us all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the work from the staff, and I think we all agree it's a very trying situation over the last year with change of government and various things. So well done to all the staff for your hard work on it. I guess what I was going to say in terms of the prioritisation and the funding allocations has been said by others across the region, but just to reiterate the view of Sustainable Bay of Plenty Charitable Trust, that we have concerns, as we would no matter which part of the region was favoured. We have concerns about the huge allocation to Tauranga and the very tiny allocation to some other parts of the region. And I think Rotorua, I know you made your comment just before, Mr. Chair, but the numbers I think are quite stark. And I think I put a couple of them in our submission, but if you look at it, including the allocation of NZTA funding to the actual territorial authority areas, you end up with 88% goes to Tauranga, 1% to Rotorua, and actually Eastern Bay is doing all right over the 10 years. You're getting 8%. So it really is quite stark, though, and I think there's a point at which I think the committee needs to sort of have a bit of a rethink and just say, are we happy with this? That's your call, obviously, but from our point of view, and having talked to people across the Bay, I think most people would not have a clue about this, but if they do understand the scale of this, they're quite concerned. And of course, I won't belabor sort of why that's important, but I think one of the issues is when you look at Rotorua's public transport system and what had to be axed from the plans there, you sort of end up with this big disparity not just from the roading budgets, but from the wider multimodal approach. In terms of public transport, we're still, I guess, singing from the same song sheet that we were 3 years ago, which is that there is not enough expenditure on public transport in this region to deliver a good public transport system. So, you know, I guess it's a genuine question, is the region deeply passionate about getting that outcome? If so, I think we need to acknowledge we need to spend more, because whenever I talk to regional council staff or talk to people in other regions about what is needed to address certain issues, it normally comes back, like most of these things, to money. And we are at the very low end per capita. So I'm not trying to say we should, you know, try to rival the public transport system in somewhere like Wellington, but I think we need to look at that per capita OPEX spend and look at the basic infrastructure that's still not happening across the region in public transport. And I know there are all sorts of plans, there's AFTI and there's this new business case and everything, but from a practical point of view, I don't see any evidence that there is a funded plan that will deliver what we have been talking about. And I guess, you know, the change of government has made that more complex, more challenging in terms of getting funding. But when I hear the minister, he's still talking about in the 5 metro cities, he wants to see good public transport outcomes. So I know that doesn't address Rotorua, but it certainly seems to include Tauranga. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the understanding I took when I went and heard the minister and when I've heard him in the media. So, you know, I don't think we'd be outside of what the government's wanting to deliver if we prioritised more investment into public transport that would help to achieve economic and social outcomes. As a practical example of the kind of thing I'm talking about, I'm not sort of suggesting the light rail across the city, but I am suggesting that my experience this morning coming to the meeting is a good example where a group of us were waiting for a bus in Brookfield in Tauranga, and we waited for quite a while. There were 3 bus routes there that on the app showed that I could catch a bus to town within a few minutes. And after about 15 to 20 minutes and a phone call to the regional council, we were able to clarify that the transit app was not working at all. The live tracking was not working at all. The buses, 2 buses were not running. 2 buses were very, very late. And a group of us trooped from one bus stop to another bus stop. And then, because we'd been guided by the 0800 to sort of not to rely on the first one. So then some of us went across the road, and then eventually we all sort of found ourselves back at the very first bus stop, got a bus in. Luckily, I'd sort of left plenty of time, so I was still running early to get here. But the point being that it's those basic things that we're told there's not enough money to be able to be invested into getting that system up and running in a way that's workable. People were laughing at it, so that you didn't have a whole bunch of angry people, but you could tell from the comments that, you know, it's deterring people from using public transport. And the biggest irony was that it was happening in a suburb where there is those people who when we were discussing it, we wanted a bus interchange in Brookfield. We desperately want one. It's needed if you want to have just a, you know, we're not talking a grand, expensive thing. We're talking a basic interchange where these different routes can meet. But the irony was that I've been in discussions with another community in Arataki in Tauranga, where they desperately don't want the proposed interchange that TCC is going to deliver. So I guess it raises the question of, you know, why are we not responding to community need and community demand, and instead trying to impose things onto communities who don't want the solution? You've got a perfectly willing community who's desperately keen to use buses in some cases, and we still haven't got a bus shelter at the one that the bus did arrive at. That's Paula's favourite one, by the way. Mr. Chair. Anyway, that's my little rant on that. But in terms of the plan itself, as we said, we think the misalignment between the objectives, the headline targets, sub-targets, and the actual prioritised project list with its associated spending is quite stark. And I think I put it in the written submission that I have heard more than one person say it is like two different plans. And I think we understand why that is. It's very hard to steer through it partway through the planning process, but it does raise questions of whether the plan is fit for purpose to actually have those gaps there. It's not the only plan. The public transport plan has probably got some similar gaps as well, and some territorial authority plans have similar gaps, but it does seem quite strange to put out a plan that has quite consistent targets around the 41% reduction in carbon emissions by 2035, and then basically have sub-targets that won't meet that, and then have a project list that is in no way going to meet that. There's just no way. I think we all know that. So therefore, I'm still in the same space as you've heard me before, which is, why are we going through the whole charade? Why don't we actually say what we think is likely? By all means, put an aspirational goal there, but make sure that when people outside the committee read it, that they know the thinking within the committee is that it's aspirational, it's not going to happen, and then they can respond how they wish. The other thing I wanted to stress in terms of public transport is, I know the focus has to be on Tauranga and hopefully still Rotorua, but I look at the issue that I raised 3 years ago when I made a submission on behalf of our trust, and that is to me, it's still quite unbelievable, the 8-hour journey that's required and the overnight stay that's required to travel from Tauranga to Whakatane on a bus. And I checked again with schedules with the different operators, and I'm still quite dumbfounded that we can talk about a low carbon system with all this stuff, and that you have to stay the night in Whakatane to be able to travel on the normal public transport system that's available through Intercity. The two operators have fallen off the track, so to speak, and then what the regional council does. And I think it's just a glaring gap. And if you look at Waikato's approach, they have a much better integrated approach between the different districts. They have advantages, of course, because some of those districts are between Hamilton and Auckland, but others are not. And they're not between Hamilton and Tauranga in some cases, but they still manage to have a much better plan around linking up their region. I understand from reports I've heard that Hawke's Bay has that. Again, they've got advantages, the closeness between Napier and Havelock North and Hastings, but the lack of integration between our three main centres seems really striking to me, and I think it needs to be looked at from a social investment perspective, at least. And there will be economic, advantages too. And the final thing is just to build on what you've already heard from Mark Boyle this morning in terms of the Te Puke situation. Actually, I'll preface it just at the other end of the Western Bay in case Mayor Denia thinks I'm forgetting about the other end. I do want to support, as I said in our submission, the genuine grassroots community initiative that's saying they want better public transport in the Katikati, Waihi Beach area, particularly the connections through to Tauranga, and actually working proactively with councils, I guess Western Bay Council, regional, and those local communities to come up with a viable, cost-effective model that can actually meet the needs of those communities. I think the staff have done really well at Regional Council to have an early engagement on that, but I'd highly encourage that. In terms of Te Puke, I think it's a bigger issue in a way. I think all those things that you've heard from Mark, you know, the issue of the bypass, I think, is one that is incredibly important. When will that be needed? How will that be integrated? Number one road, I submitted, I think it was to the RLTP last time, that is a very striking sort of situation where you want a better outcome for that local community. And there is a strong economic case to put in, and it's coming from, you'll probably hear this afternoon from James Trevelyan when he presents. I imagine he might raise that issue, that for a big business like that, they desperately want a better, safer walking and cycling connection to the city, and they want something sorted out in terms of safety around those trucks, and we'd strongly support that. We know Gary Ellis tried hard to get something over the line, but I think it needs to be lifted up as a regional priority. But most importantly is probably the connectivity between Te Puke, the PEI, Papamoa, the city. You know, what is the plan for that? It's in AFTI. It was sold to us from AFTI as a key piece of the AFTI puzzle. It was supposed to mean that we could actually pour more resources as a sub-region into the connectivity between those centres and put in better public transport with a view to linking it to rail in the longer term. Putting aside the rail, you know, it still seems to make a lot of sense to you know, here I am calling for a new road to be built, but I think it actually meets the needs of that community and also meets the needs of Papamoa. And as I know Commissioner Selwood will be well aware, that the Papamoa community are wanting better tsunami escape options. They're wanting better connectivity to Te Puke anyway. And it just seems a no-brainer to actually look at that and see where that sits in the planning. And it just seems to have completely fallen off all the planning. I mean, I've looked through everything I can find. People have asked me about it. No one that I know can find anything on it. So if there is something hidden in the TSP or anywhere, I'd like to know what's being planned. But it seems so crucial to this sub-region. And I guess the final thing is just the cycle walkway connection between Rangiuru, and we'd just like to throw our support behind the Te Ara Kahikatea Pathway Society proposal. We think it makes complete sense. We think in terms of cycleways and the economic gains that can be made from them, that's probably a really good one. I think you'd struggle with a lot of cycleway proposals, but that one I think has potential to actually have tangible, you know, outcomes that the government could well fund. So we'd strongly support that being funded. So I think that's probably captures a lot of what I've intended to say.
Excellent submission, Glenn. It's Worship Mayor Denia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Glenn, for your submission and supporting a number of projects which would certainly benefit our part of the world, particularly those around Rangiuru Business Park and Number One Road and PEI and so on. I do want to ask you though, what do you think is the minimum offer that a service between Waihi Beach and Katikati to Tauranga would look like? So at the moment there is a service, and I understand that there will be some moves to review it in due course, but what does a viable service look like for you in terms of times and regularity?
Well, working through it a little bit with people in that community, there's just some practical things. So like the bus that goes back from Tauranga to Katikati as a sort of a peak afternoon connection doesn't have a connection that goes through to Waihi Beach. So some of the people were frustrated that they couldn't practically get any further than Katikati, but in the morning there was a route that they could apparently get through to Katikati reasonably early and catch one of the buses in. So that's one thing. Another example was that the connectivity with the intercity bus wasn't there. Another one was that there's a huge gap in the morning. So even if you did manage to get the afternoon connection right, a lot of people said especially because of traffic, as you know, that there's an early bus from Katikati, but some people wanted one that falls into a great big space in the middle. And the reason why is funding again. There's not enough funding to fund one more bus route, or it was one more bus service, sorry, on that route from Katikati. So you've got the connection through from Waihi Beach, but then they've got to wait for an hour and a half, I think. I might stand corrected on that, but something along those lines. And we're talking about the peak morning timeframe, which is precisely when most people want to actually travel by bus. So things like that, which I think just needs people to step back and go, right, what are the needs of that community, as opposed to what can we afford to do with our limited budget that regional council's given us, and we've got to try and fit this square peg into this round hole. It's not working. It's not going to deliver the outcomes that anyone wants. And the people who use it now are just lucky enough that they can fit their lives around it. But it's not, from what I've heard in the public meetings that I was involved with, it's not what they want.
I'm also interested in the trip from, well, I presume Tauranga to Whakatane. I think it's probably worse for Katikati. Last time I looked, you have to go via Hamilton to get to Whakatane, which is just crazy. But yeah, thank you for your submission. Thank you.
Bishop Mealuka.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn, for your submission. On this table that you've got here on page 623, I wonder what would happen to the look of those numbers if you only focused on the top 20 projects, which are the ones that we've been told at the outset have got the highest chance of being. I haven't done the numbers myself, but
I was too scared to do the numbers because
Okay.
I sort of thought I might get so close to 100% for Tauranga that I probably wouldn't want to utter it, seeing I'm a Tauranga resident, that I feel too embarrassed.
Okay.
But
Right, no, fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Questions or clarifications from the panel? There being none, thank you, Glenn, as always.
Thank you.
Brilliant presentation. I'm going to adjourn for lunch now. We're right on time. And we will reconvene, Amanda, at
1 p.m.
1 p.m.